Go away from us. You cannot be friends with us. Can't you see that we are all very beautiful? We can't be seen with an ugly girl. Leave. Before we proceed with this amazing story, please support my channel by clicking on the subscribe button and also liking this video. I need you all to write better and grow bigger. Thank you so much. Now, let's dive in. Amanda walked through the village market with her head bowed low, her worn wrapper clinging to her thin frame as the morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty ground. At 23 years old, she had learned to make herself as small as possible, to move through the crowds like a ghost, hoping that perhaps today would be different. But it never was. The moment she approached the yam seller's stall, the woman's face twisted into a mask of disgust, her lips curling as if she had tasted something bitter. Go away from here, the trader spat, waving her hand dismissively. You will drive away my customers with that face of yours. Go! The words struck Amanda like physical blows, each one finding its mark in her already wounded heart. She clutched her empty basket tighter, feeling the familiar sting of tears threatening to spill. But she had learned long ago that crying only made things worse. The other villagers would gather round to mock her tears, calling her names that cut deeper than any knife could. As she turned away from the yam seller, a group of young women her age burst into cruel laughter, their voices carrying across the marketplace like the cawing of crows. Look, there goes the monster, one of them called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Even the dogs run away when they see her coming. Their laughter echoed in Amanda's ears as she hurried past, trying to ignore the pointing fingers and whispered comments that followed her like a dark cloud. She had once tried to make friends with these same women, had approached them with genuine smiles and offers of companionship, but they had rejected her so viciously that she never tried again. Now she spent her days in solitude, working in her small garden plot at the edge of the village, speaking only when absolutely necessary, existing in a world where beauty was everything and she possessed none of it. The loneliness had become her constant companion, a heavy burden that pressed down on her shoulders with every step she took. She often wondered what she had done in a past life to deserve such punishment, what sin she must be atoning for to be born into a face that made others recoil in horror. But despite the daily torment, despite the rejection and humiliation, Amanda had somehow managed to keep a small flame of kindness burning in her heart, a tiny light that refused to be extinguished by the darkness that surrounded her. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as Amanda made her way home from the market with the few items she had managed to purchase from a half-blind trader who had not seen her face clearly. The dusty path that led out of the village center was usually empty at this hour, when most people were resting in the shade of their homes, avoiding the worst of the day's heat. But today, Amanda spotted a figure struggling ahead of her, an old woman bent almost double under the weight of an enormous bundle balanced precariously on her head. The woman's steps were unsteady, her walking stick trembling with each movement as she tried to navigate the uneven ground. Amanda watched as several villagers passed the old woman without even slowing down, their eyes sliding away from her struggle as if she were invisible. One man actually laughed as he walked by, saying something about old fools who didn't know their own limitations. The old woman stumbled, nearly dropping her heavy load, and Amanda's heart clenched with a familiar pain, the pain of being invisible, of being someone others looked through rather than at. Without hesitation, Amanda quickened her pace and approached the struggling woman, her own small basket of goods clutched in one hand. "Mama, please, let me help you," she said softly, her voice gentle and respectful. The old woman looked up and Amanda found herself staring into the most peculiar eyes she had ever seen, eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies of stars, ancient and knowing and somehow sad. The woman's face was deeply lined with age, her skin weathered like old leather, but there was something about her presence that made Amanda feel both comforted and unsettled at the same time. "Child," the old woman whispered, her voice like dry leaves rustling in the wind. "You would help an old woman like me when so many others have passed by without a second glance?" Amanda nodded firmly, already reaching for the heavy bundle. "Yes, Mama, no one should have to carry such a burden alone. Please tell me where you are going and I will carry this load for you." The old woman's strange eyes filled with tears, and she allowed Amanda to take the bundle from her head, though she warned that it was very heavy and the path ahead was long and difficult. But Amanda simply adjusted the weight on her own head, steadied herself with a deep breath, and gestured for the old woman to lead the way, not knowing that this single act of kindness would change the course of her entire life. The path led them far from the village, winding through thick bush that grew denser with each passing moment, branches reaching out like grasping fingers and vines hanging down like curtains separating them from the world they had left behind. Amanda's neck ached from the weight of the bundle. Sweat poured down her face and back, soaking through her wrapper, but she did not complain or ask to rest. The old woman moved slowly ahead of her, her walking stick tapping against the hard earth in a rhythm that seemed almost hypnotic, and occasionally she would glance back at Amanda with those strange, star-filled eyes, nodding with what looked like approval. They walked for what felt like hours, the sun beginning its descent towards the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, before they finally emerged into a small clearing where the most unusual house Amanda had ever seen stood waiting. It was neither large nor small, neither beautiful nor ugly, but something in between, something that seemed to shift and change depending on how the light hit it, as if it could not quite decide what it wanted to be. "This is my home," the old woman said, her voice suddenly stronger than it had been on the road. "Please bring the bundle inside and set it down wherever you find space." Amanda ducked through the low doorway and found herself in a single room that was somehow cramped and spacious at the same time, filled with clay pots and woven baskets and bundles of dried herbs hanging from the ceiling. The air inside was thick with the scent of strange spices and something else, something that smelled like rain about to fall, and earth after a storm, and flowers that bloomed only under moonlight. She carefully lowered the heavy bundle to the ground, rolling her shoulders to ease the stiffness that had settled into her muscles, and turned to find the old woman watching her with an expression that was impossible to read. "Thank you, child," the old woman said, moving closer with surprising speed and grace for someone who had seemed so frail on the road. "You have shown me kindness when kindness is rare in this world. You have carried my burden without complaint, without asking for reward, without even knowing my name. Tell me, what is your name, and why does a young woman like you walk alone with no friends beside you?" Amanda's throat tightened with emotion, but she answered honestly, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Amanda, Mama, and I walk alone because no one wishes to walk with someone as ugly as me. The villagers mock me, the traders turn me away, and the young people laugh at my face. I have learned to accept my place in this world." The old woman's eyes blazed suddenly with an inner fire, and she stepped even closer, reaching out with one gnarled hand towards Amanda's face. "Ugly," the old woman repeated, her voice crackling with something that might have been anger, or might have been sorrow, or perhaps both woven together like threads in cloth. "Child, do you know what true ugliness is? True ugliness is not found in the shape of a nose, or the curve of a mouth, or the texture of skin. True ugliness lives in the heart that refuses to help, in the soul that takes pleasure in another's pain, in the spirit that sees suffering and looks away. You, Amanda, carry more beauty in your kind heart than all the pretty faces in that village combined, and it is time that the outside matched the inside." Before Amanda could respond, before she could even process the meaning of these strange words, the old woman pressed her palm against Amanda's face, her touch surprisingly warm and gentle. The moment her skin made contact, Amanda felt a sensation unlike anything she had ever experienced, like lightning running through her veins, and fire dancing along her bones, and water washing through her soul, all at once and all overwhelming. The small room spun around her, the walls seeming to breathe and pulse with life, the bundles of herbs swaying though there was no wind, and Amanda would have fallen if the old woman had not steadied her with her other hand.
The transformation lasted only seconds, but to Amanda it felt like years, like centuries, like entire lifetimes passing in the space between heartbeats. When it finally ended, when the sensations faded and the room stopped spinning and she could breathe again, Amanda found herself looking at the old woman through different eyes, seeing the world with a clarity she had never possessed before. "Go now," the old woman said, stepping back and gesturing toward the door. Go back to your village and live the life you were always meant to live. But remember, child, always remember what you have learned in your years of suffering. Remember how it feels to be cast aside, to be mocked, to be alone. Let that memory guide you in how you treat others, for beauty is a gift that can be given or taken away, but kindness is a choice that only you can make. Amanda wanted to ask questions, wanted to know what had happened, wanted to understand who this woman really was, but the old woman simply shook her head and pointed again toward the door. In a daze, Amanda left the strange house and began the long walk back through the bush, her mind reeling with confusion and wonder. She did not yet know what the old woman had done to her, did not yet realize that everything about her appearance had changed, that the face the villagers had called ugly now radiated a beauty so profound that it would stop people in their tracks. All she knew was that something fundamental had shifted inside her, that she felt different somehow, lighter and yet more solid at the same time, as if she had been carrying a weight she had not even realized was there until it was suddenly lifted from her shoulders. Amanda reached her small home just as the last light was fading from the sky, the familiar path to her door now feeling somehow different, as if the entire world had changed while she was away. She pushed open the door of her modest dwelling and lit the oil lamp with trembling hands, her mind still processing the strange encounter in the bush, the old woman's cryptic words echoing in her thoughts like a song she could not quite remember. It was not until she passed by the small piece of polished metal that served as her mirror hung on the wall near her sleeping mat that she finally understood what had happened. The face staring back at her from that dull reflection was not her own, could not possibly be her own, yet it moved when she moved, blinked when she blinked, opened its mouth in shock when she gasped in disbelief. The woman in the mirror was beautiful beyond description, with smooth skin that glowed like honey in lamplight, eyes that sparkled like stars reflected in deep water, lips that curved perfectly, and features so harmoniously arranged that Amanda could hardly believe she was looking at a real person or some artist's impossible dream. She stood frozen before that mirror for what might have been minutes or might have been hours, touching her face with wandering fingers, tracing the new contours of her cheeks, her jaw, her forehead, trying to reconcile this stunning stranger with the person she had been that very morning. Tears began to flow down her cheeks, but these were not the bitter tears of humiliation she had cried so many times before. These were tears of wonder, of gratitude, of overwhelming emotion that she could not even name. The old woman had not just changed her face, she had transformed her entirely, had given her what every cruel villager had implied she could never have: beauty that would make people stop and stare, beauty that would open doors instead of closing them, beauty that would finally allow her to walk through the village with her head held high. But even as joy flooded through her heart, Amanda remembered the old woman's warning, her reminder to never forget the suffering she had endured, to let those painful memories guide her treatment of others. Amanda wiped the tears from her beautiful new face and made a silent promise to herself and to the mysterious woman who had blessed her. She would never become like the villagers who had tormented her, would never use her beauty as a weapon or a tool to make others feel small, would never forget what it felt like to be invisible and alone. She would carry the lessons of her suffering like a torch, letting them light her path forward into this strange new life where people would finally see her, though she wondered if they would really see her at all, or just the beautiful mask she now wore. The next morning, Amanda walked into the village market with her head held high for the first time in her life, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and apprehension, unsure of what to expect, but knowing that everything would be different now. She had barely set foot on the main path when heads began to turn, conversation stopped mid-sentence, and a hush fell over the crowd like a blanket being drawn across a sleeping child. The yam seller who had driven her away just yesterday now rushed forward with her best produce held out like offerings, her face split by a wide smile that looked painful in its intensity. "Sister, welcome, welcome," the woman gushed, nearly stumbling over her own feet in her eagerness. "Please take these yams, the finest in the market. For you is special price, practically free. You honor my stall with your presence." Amanda stared at the woman, recognition flickering in her eyes, remembering the disgust that had twisted these same features only a day before, and she felt a cold wave of understanding wash over her. These people had no idea who she really was. They saw only the beautiful face and assumed she was a stranger, a visitor from another village perhaps, someone worthy of respect and kindness simply because she was pleasant to look at. The young women who had mocked her mercilessly now approached with false smiles and eager questions, asking her name, where she came from, whether she would like to join them for palm wine later, their voices sickeningly sweet compared to the venom they had spat at her before. "I am Amanda," she said clearly, watching their faces carefully for any sign of recognition. "I have lived in this village all my life." Confusion rippled through the crowd, whispers spreading like wildfire as people tried to reconcile this beautiful woman with the ugly girl they had tormented for years. "Amanda?" one of the young women repeated, her voice rising with disbelief. "But you cannot be. Amanda is ugly. Everyone knows this." The word hung in the air like an accusation, and Amanda felt a familiar pain lance through her heart. But this time it was different, because now she had power she had never possessed before. "Yes, I am that Amanda, the one you laughed at, the one you called names, the one you refused to befriend. I am the same person, only now I wear a different face, and suddenly I am worthy of your kindness." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the uncomfortable shuffling of feet and the clearing of throats as the villagers realized what they had done, how shallow and cruel they had been, how they had judged a person's worth entirely by her appearance. Some had the grace to look ashamed, their eyes dropping to the ground, but others simply stared at her with hungry eyes, already forgetting the lesson in their eagerness to claim friendship with the most beautiful woman in the village. In the weeks that followed her transformation, Amanda found herself navigating a strange new world where doors opened before she arrived, where traders competed for her business, where young men composed songs in her honor and left gifts at her doorstep like offerings at a shrine. At first, Amanda felt a bitter satisfaction in their sudden change of heart, in watching the same people who had made her life miserable now scramble to win her favor, their hypocrisy laid bare for all to see. But as the days passed and the shallow attention continued, as she sat surrounded by so-called friends who knew nothing of her true self, who cared nothing for her thoughts or dreams or the kindness that always lived in her heart, Amanda began to feel a different kind of loneliness, one that was perhaps even more painful than the isolation she had known before. These people loved her beauty, not her. They wanted to be seen with her, not to actually see her. They valued her face while remaining blind to everything that made her who she really was. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of crimson and gold, Amanda returned to the bush where the old woman's house had stood, needing to thank her benefactor and perhaps to ask for wisdom in dealing with this complicated gift she had been given. But when she reached the clearing, she found it empty, with no house to be seen, just grass and trees and the ordinary sounds of the forest settling in for the night. At first, Amanda felt panic rising in her chest, but then she noticed something carved on the bark of a large tree at the edge of the clearing, words that seemed to glow faintly in the fading light. True beauty lives in how you treat those who can do nothing for you. You have been given a mirror to show the world its own shallow heart. Use it wisely. Amanda traced the words with her fingers, understanding flooding through her like dawn breaking over the hills, and she finally grasped the true nature of the gift she had received.
The old woman had not simply made her beautiful, she had given her a tool, a way to expose the cruelty and superficiality of the world, while also giving her the power to choose a different path. Amanda walked back to the village with new purpose burning in her heart, determined to use her beauty not as a shield or a weapon, but as a bridge, a way to show others that true worth came from within, that the kindness she had always carried mattered more than any face ever could. She began seeking out those whom the village had cast aside, the sick and the elderly, and the ones others considered beneath notice, offering them friendship and help without expecting anything in return. And slowly, gradually, some of the villagers began to understand,
began to see beyond the surface to the deeper lessons Amanda was teaching through her actions. The old woman had transformed more than just Amanda's face that day in the bush. She had planted seeds of change that would grow and spread throughout the entire village, teaching them all that beauty without kindness was just another form of ugliness, and that the truest transformation happened not in the mirror, but in the heart.
What did you learn from this story? And where are you watching from?
Like this video and hit the subscribe button if you have not subscribed already. Thank you for watching. See you next time.